You are at the intersection of Pont des Îles and the Route Verte. We will now explore Île Notre-Dame and its remaining pavilions. Let's start with the Art Center, the last vestige of the Canadian Pavilion. While facing the canal, turn right and follow the Route Verte. We'll be walking along the canal. Stay well to your right and watch out for bicycles. Let's go. Around you, there are still some traces of the original landscape. For example, to your left is the canal, which crosses the island from east to west. Further along, there are some gardens and wooden parks. The radical transformation of this sector takes place in 1978 to accommodate the Gilles Villeneuve racetrack for the Canadian Grand Prix, and later, in 1980, to make way for Floralie Internationale, an exhibition of flowers and plants from around the world. Most of the 62 countries participating in Expo had their own pavilion. The First Nations of Canada had one too. In the distance, among the trees, you can see the 20-meter-high totem of the Kwakiutl tribe of British Columbia. We'll see it from up close later during our walk. The summer of Expo is a moment of extraordinary openness to the world. Visitors go from pavilion to pavilion, from country to country, tasting the gastronomic delights of the world, often for the first time. As a side note, the site of Expo includes 39 restaurants and 66 snack bars. A passport for man and his world allows visitors to collect national stamps every time they enter a pavilion. As you walk along, just for a few meters, try to visualize how it all was. To your right was the Israeli pavilion, and on your left, on the other side of the canal, was the pavilion of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, an independent state since 1962. In front of the pavilion's bar, musicians played on a floating platform in the water. The pavilion was served by the mini rail, which crossed the canal and passed by just here in front of you on a rail system raised several meters above the ground, heading towards the Canadian Pavilion. Then, if we continue, immediately after the first footbridge to the left, there was, to your right, the Greek Pavilion, and on the other side, across the canal, was the Mauritius Pavilion. But now, here is Jacques Languirand, the versatile intellectual and communicator. Listen to his recollections. Wait for me on the benches at the next intersection.
L'ambiance était festive. Les gens aimaient beaucoup se rencontrer, bavarder entre eux.
The atmosphere was festive. People met, chatted, young people gathered on the grass. At times the smell of pot was in the air.
Les jeunes en particulier se regroupaient sur le terrain.
An absolutely extraordinary atmosphere. It is impossible to experience an event like this without being marked for life.
La vie, ça, puis il y avait là, sans être marqué pour la vie.
You have to remember that we were still at the beginning of the Quiet Revolution, and that many Quebec families had refused to send their children to Expo, even with their classes, because of the foreign customs of visiting nations, the presence of communists, miniskirts, and so on. Other times, other manners.
If you have arrived at the second intersection with the footbridge, turn right. Walk about 15 meters and take the small dirt road on your left. It will lead you to some benches on a concrete platform. It is there that the former United Nations Pavilion stood. It is now a terrace overlooking the St. Lawrence River. I'll be waiting for you on one of the benches. Again, here is Jacques Languirand, who was also the designer of Citérama at the Man in the Community Pavilion.
Quebecers were delighted. They came from all corners of the province. The atmosphere was festive. For Quebecers, it was an opening to the world, to new technologies, to new types of lighting effects. There was an overflow of creativity.
Alors, il y avait une créativité absolument débordante.
The flag of the United Nations and those of the 122 members of the organization are part of the UN Pavilion.
La rencontre des cultures a été un moment très fort, très très fort.
The meeting of cultures was a strong force. There would be people from 5 or 6 different countries speaking different languages. Others also had the same experience. That's what's extraordinary and amazing.
La même expérience, vous comprenez? C'est ça qui est extraordinaire.
Let's take a moment to listen to Pauline Curien, a doctor of political science.
Le fait d'entrer dans une expo nous fait sortir du monde ordinaire. On arrive dans un endroit-
Entering into an exhibition takes us out of the ordinary world. We arrive in a microcosm where most of the countries of the world are represented, but this microcosm is somehow apolitical in the non-partisan meaning of the
De
term.
parler de hiérarchie vis-à-vis des Amérindiens, par exemple, parce que les Amérindiens, pour la première fois dans leur histoire, avaient leur propre pavillon.
There was no need to talk about hierarchy for Native Americans who for the first time had their own flag. This was criticized. For the first time, they could represent themselves as they wished. In 67, there was no longer a hierarchy, and Expo 67, in choosing man and his world as its theme, wanted to demonstrate this unity.
En choisissant son thème Terre des hommes, montrait au contraire l'unité.
In front of you are some stairs. Follow me. We're stepping down onto the Gilles Villeneuve racetrack, which is a bicycle track when not being used as a racetrack. The Canadian Grand Prix is held here in June. Cross the track and turn left. Again, be vigilant of the traffic. Continue along the wall to the Canadian Pavilion's Art Centre. It was Julien Hébert, one of the fathers of industrial design in Quebec, who designed the logo for Expo 67. Martin Racine, a professor of design at Concordia University, speaks about the designer Julien Hébert and the meaning of Expo 67's logo.
On reconnaît plein de choses dans son pictogramme, je peux les évoquer, des figures humaines. C'est l'ancien.
We recognize many things in his pictogram. I can point them out. Human figures. Here is the ancient Greek symbol of a man reinterpreted by Julien Hébert. Earth is symbolized in the form of a circle, and the pictograms arranged in pairs around the globe are images of fraternity, of solidarity, of equality. No gender is expressed. Men and women are not distinct. There are no race distinctions. It is really a level of abstraction that highlights human solidarity, a fraternal equality among people of different nations.
L'aspect humaniste du bouquin de Saint-Exupéry.
This represents the humanistic outlook of the book by Saint-Exupéry and the theme of Expo, Man and His World. One can also perceive what might resemble a snowflake. We observe the very distinct geometry of crystals in the symbol, the distinct relationship with snow of a Nordic country. One can also perceive trees, a forest. There is the presence of nature, which is interesting.
Do you see the path to your left? Walk beyond it and stop in front of the sign that indicates the Canadian Pavilion.
Le choix du terme Terre des hommes était déjà excellent, déjà audacieux. Je crois qu'en faisant le symbole, en exprimant l'amitié des hommes sur la Terre, on ajoutait quelque chose au terme, ou en tout cas on l'explicitait davantage. Nous avons préféré le bleu parce que les Nations Unies se sont du bleu. Je pense qu'encore là, on donnait le caractère universel à l'exposition.
We have arrived.